We've collected our sap. Now we're going to take that sap and boil it down. So basically what we're doing is we're taking this sap that's mostly water, about 98% water, and what we're going to do is we're going to put it on this evaporator and we're going to boil off the water, and then once we get off most of the water, about 95%, then we'll have the syrup left over. So there'll still be a small amount of water in there. If we were to boil it completely off, we'd just have raw sugar. We filter the sap again right when it comes out of the collection barrel, just in case something managed to slip through initially in our first cheesecloth filter, which is a basic filter. So we use a little bit thicker of a filter here, almost like a coffee filter, with a cheesecloth as well, just to catch any additional things that might have snuck in there. And then we put it right onto the evaporator pan then. So our evaporator is a very simple evaporator. Our stove is a basic small wood stove. Our pan on top can hold about 30 gallons, and that 30 gallons usually can be boiled down in about 8 hours. But in total, if we keep the temperature real high, usually if we do about 60 gallons of sap between the different trees, we can get about 60 gallons boiled down in about 13 hours. So depending on which species of tree you're using for the maples, if you're using just sugar maples, it's 40 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup. If you're using red maple and silver maple trees, you're somewhere between 45 and 50. And then there's a whole other group of trees you can use. You can tap sycamore, you can tap hickory, but when you get into those, you're looking at 80 gallons of sap to 1 gallon of syrup, or 120 with sycamore to 1 gallon of syrup. So that just takes more work. When we're doing this, the most important thing is that we want to keep the temperature pretty high, so right around 217 degrees, depending on your elevation also. So if you're a little bit higher in elevation, you have to get up to the 220s, but we want to keep that temperature high and consistent so that, one, you're not heating up and cooling down your sap continuously, but you're also able to keep your process moving along so it doesn't take as long. Basically what we're doing with skimming the foam off the top is, this is basically the solids and things that would be within the tree. So potassium, calcium, different chemicals that would be in the soil that the tree's going to pull up through its xylem and phloem and root system and kind of passing throughout the tree. So when we skim that foam off, we're basically catching some of that, what's called niter, and we're removing those before we get to the filtration process later. Maple tea, this is one of my favorite things, and we like to, when we do programs with the public, we like people to get a chance to try maple tea. So basically what you can do is you take any type of tea that you prefer, and instead of adding processed sugar to it like you would if you were sipping some tea at home, instead of taking a spoonful of sugar, you just take a little bit of the sap that is still boiling on the stove, and you just dump that right in there onto your tea bag and let it steep for a few minutes, and then you have yourself a pretty delicious treat. What we do here at the park is we never finish it in the evaporator pan. We get pretty close. We get to about 3 gallons of sap that still needs to be boiled down to syrup, and we get pretty close down to that marker where we know it's ready, so we take it off of that pan and move it inside and finish it inside. Our final filtration process happens when we're pouring our syrup into our containers. So there is a felt sock that we use with what looks like a coffee filter insert, and that catches the rest of those solids and things that we didn't get when we were scraping the foam off the top or the niter. The bottling process is pretty easy. There are a few things you want to remember if you're doing it at home. So the first thing you want to remember is make sure your glasses are hot, because you're going to be taking that hot syrup off the stove, pouring it through your next filtration process into the jar. If your jar is not hot enough or a similar temperature as that syrup, you're going to lose all of your syrup because that glass jar will break. You can use plastic. Make sure you're using a plastic that can withstand temperatures over 200 degrees, because initially that first contact is pretty hot. After we jar it, then we lock all of our lids, and then we put it down into a canning pot and we boil it and can it so that the syrup will stay. And then when you are canning it, you want to make sure that none of the lids are popping, just like you normally would if you were canning vegetables, tomatoes, and things like that. You can store things that have been canned properly in a normal pantry or things like that, and they'll stay that way for a good 6 months. But if you are not canning it, then it needs to go directly into the refrigerator.